It was one of those gray mornings where the sky seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 quiet stories. The streets were cold, damp, and nearly empty. Everyone was in a rush, heads down, earbuds in, coffee in hand. But not her. Naomi, a young woman in her 20s with worn-out sneakers and a heart too big for her own good, had just left a night shift at the diner where she worked 6 days a week. Her hair was tied back, eyes tired, but she still carried a small paper bag, her only breakfast, a sandwich she had saved from the night before. She was about to take a bite when a soft sound stopped her. A faint meow. She turned and spotted a scruffy, skinny cat curled up near a trash bin, its fur matted, its ribs showing. It didn't even have the strength to beg, just stared at her with those wide, silent eyes. Naomi hesitated for a moment, then sighed. She knelt down, tore the sandwich in half, and carefully placed one piece in front of the cat. "You need it more than I do," she whispered. The cat blinked slowly, then began to eat. Naomi didn't think much of it. She stood up, stretched her aching back, and continued down the block, unaware that she was being watched. Not by a person passing by, but from the apartment across the street, where an elderly man sat quietly behind the window. His name was Everett Langston. Once a wealthy real estate developer, Everett had outlived most of his family, battled cancer for 2 years, and was now in hospice care inside his grand, but lonely, penthouse. That cat, Theo, was his only companion, and Everett had trained the animal to roam free during the early mornings. Not for exercise, but for something far more important. Everett believed that money should go to the deserving, to those who showed compassion when no one else was watching. And so, in the final months of his life, he began sending Theo out into the city, watching closely from the shadows to see who might stop. Who might care. Who might offer kindness without expecting anything in return. Naomi didn't know any of this. She didn't know her small act of generosity was being weighed like gold on a scale. She didn't know that just hours after she walked away, Everett called his lawyer and changed a single line in his will. The next day, Naomi received a letter in the mail, hand-delivered by a man in a black suit. She opened it slowly, not expecting anything beyond maybe a diner schedule change or some overdue bill. But inside, were words that didn't make sense at first. And a number that made her sit down right there on her apartment floor. But who was this man? Why her? And what did a scruffy cat have to do with it all? What happened next would not only change Naomi's life, but uncover a truth that would leave her speechless. Naomi stared at the letter in her hands, her fingers trembling as she read it over again. It wasn't a prank. The language was formal. Legal. Her name was printed in bold letters, and right below it was a message that seemed impossible. "You have been named as a beneficiary in the will of Mr. Everett Langston." Then came the number, $250,000. Her breath caught. The room spun just a little. She looked around her tiny studio apartment. The walls were thin, the heater clicked loudly every night, and the ceiling had a water stain that kept getting worse. She lived paycheck to paycheck. Some weeks, ramen was a luxury. And now, someone she didn't even know, had left her $250,000? She sat there on the floor, still in her work uniform, the city noise buzzing faintly outside her window. It didn't make sense. She'd never heard of an Everett Langston. Why would a millionaire leave her anything, let alone a fortune? The letter included a phone number and a request to meet with a lawyer. Naomi felt like she was dreaming. She hadn't done anything special, at least, not that she could think of. She hadn't saved anyone, hadn't made the news, hadn't gone viral. All she had done was feed a hungry cat. She frowned. The cat. It all came rushing back. That tiny, ragged creature she'd shared her breakfast with. She remembered its tired eyes, the way it hadn't begged, just waited. And she remembered the strange feeling she got as she walked away, like she wasn't as alone as she thought. Like someone had been watching. The next day, Naomi showed up to the lawyer's office, an old building downtown with polished floors and quiet halls. She felt out of place, like she didn't belong there. Her clothes were clean but plain, her shoes scuffed. As she walked in, a man in a dark gray suit greeted her with a small nod. "Miss Naomi Carter?" he asked. She nodded. "I'm Mr. Langston's attorney. Please, come in." The office was silent, lined with books and papers. Naomi sat down, her heart still thumping like a drum. The lawyer gave her a gentle look, like he understood this was all a bit much. "You're probably wondering why you were included in Mr. Langston's will," he said, opening a thick file. Everett was a very private man. He had no immediate family left. In his final months, he created what he called his final kindness test. Naomi blinked. Kindness test. The man nodded. He sent his cat, Theo, out into the world. Not just wandering aimlessly, but with purpose. Everett wanted to see how strangers treated something small, helpless, and unimportant. He believed that true character isn't shown when people are being watched, but when they think no one is. Naomi's voice caught. And he was watching? From his apartment window. Every morning. She sat back, speechless. The sandwich. That tiny gesture, it had changed everything. But even now, it didn't feel real. Why her? Why that day? Had others passed the test too? And what kind of man creates something like this in his final days? As Naomi left the office, check in hand and 1,000 questions racing through her mind, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story. Much more. Because when she glanced across the street from the law firm, she saw the cat again. Sitting. Watching. Waiting. Naomi stood frozen on the sidewalk, eyes locked with the cat's. Theo sat across the street like a statue, his yellow eyes blinking slowly as cars rushed past between them. The air around her felt strange, thicker somehow, like the moment itself was stretching. She clutched the envelope tighter in her hand, suddenly unsure if the check inside was a blessing, or something else entirely. That night, Naomi couldn't sleep. The cat, the money, the lawyer's words, it all spun around in her head like a storm. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, hearing every creak in the building, every car that passed outside. The check was now tucked safely in her drawer, untouched. She hadn't even told anyone. Not her coworkers, not her neighbors, not even her best friend, Jasmine. Something about it all felt too strange to explain. Too heavy. And she couldn't shake the look in that cat's eyes. It wasn't just a stray. It knew something. Or maybe, it had seen something. The next day, Naomi went back to the same street. She didn't plan to, her feet just took her there. Same time, same place. But this time, Theo was gone. She waited 10 minutes, then 20. Nothing. But she wasn't the only one waiting. Across the street, leaning on a cane and sipping coffee from a paper cup, sat a woman in her 60s. She wore dark sunglasses and a brown coat buttoned up to the neck, despite the rising sun. Naomi almost walked past her, but the woman raised her head just slightly and said, "You fed him too, didn't you?" Naomi stopped. "The cat," the woman continued, her voice low. "You saw him. You helped him. That's why you're here." Naomi sat down on the bench next to her, heart starting to race. "You knew Everett?" The woman nodded slowly. "I was his nurse for the last few months. He told me about the test. About the cat. Said it was his final gift to the world, to find the invisible good that still exists." "Did others help the cat?" Naomi asked. The woman's lips tightened. "A few. Not many. Most people ignored him. Some even chased him away." Naomi felt a chill. So, what happens to them? The ones who helped? They were noted, the woman said, carefully choosing her words. Some received letters. Others didn't. Everett didn't just look at one moment of kindness, he looked deeper. Watched their lives. Who they were when no one else was looking. Naomi's stomach turned. Was she still being watched? That same evening, as she returned home, Naomi found something waiting at her door. A small package. No return address. Inside was a photo, black and white, grainy, taken from a high angle. It showed her kneeling on the street, feeding the cat. There was no note, just a timestamp, 6:42 a.m. She stared at it, her breath shallow. Someone had been watching her even closer than she thought. But why send the photo now? And what did it mean? Over the next few days, things only got stranger. A man in a brown hat began showing up outside the diner where she worked. Always at the same table, never ordering more than a coffee. She caught him glancing at her more than once. When she asked her manager about him, the reply was simple: regular customer. Shows up the same time every morning. Doesn't say much. Naomi couldn't tell if she was being protected, or followed. And now she wasn't sure if Everett's test was really over. Or if it had just begun. Days slipped by, and the weight of uncertainty settled heavily on Naomi's shoulders. Every time she stepped outside, her eyes searched the streets for the scruffy cat, or for that mysterious man in the brown hat. She tried to keep her routine normal, work the diner, pay bills, keep her head down, but the world felt different now, like she was walking through a fog of secrets she couldn't quite reach. One evening, just as the sun was setting and painting the sky orange and pink, Naomi found a note slipped under her apartment door. No handwriting, just typed words. Not everything is what it seems. Trust the cat. Trust the test. But be careful who watches you. Her heart thudded so loud she thought it might burst. Was this from the lawyer? The nurse? Or someone else? She didn't know. But it was clear the quiet kindness she showed that morning feeding a starving cat had pulled her into something bigger than she ever imagined. At work, the man in the brown hat was still there, sitting at his usual spot, eyes following her. When Naomi dared to glance his way, he gave a slight nod, but said nothing. His silence made her uneasy. Why was he here? Was he part of this test Everett had set in motion? Or was he guarding her? Or watching her? One night, when the diner was closing and Naomi was wiping down tables, she noticed movement outside. Theo the cat appeared, slinking between the shadows, his eyes gleaming in the dim streetlight. She followed him instinctively, stepping into the quiet street. The cat led her to a small alleyway behind the building, where a figure waited. It was the woman, the nurse from earlier. Her face was lined with years of care and quiet strength. "You need to hear this," she said softly. "Everett's will wasn't just about money. It was about responsibility. That fortune you were left, it's a key. A key to a promise he made long ago. A promise to help those who deserve a chance. But there are others who want to stop it. People who don't want kindness rewarded." Naomi's pulse quickened. "What do you mean? Who?" The nurse hesitated. "Some of Everett's old business partners. Men who lost everything when he chose to give away his fortune. They've been watching too, waiting for the right moment to strike." Naomi swallowed hard. "So, this test, feeding the cat, it's just the beginning?" The nurse nodded. "You passed the first step. But now, you have to be ready. Because what happens next will decide everything." The street felt colder. The night, darker. Later that week, as Naomi walked home, the man in the brown hat finally stepped forward. His voice was calm but firm. "You don't know me, but I'm here to help. Everett planned for this. The kindness test was never simple. You're part of something much bigger. Naomi wanted to run, to scream, to hide. But the truth was sinking in, her life had changed forever. The money, the cat, the strangers watching her, they were pieces of a puzzle she was only beginning to understand. The next morning, Naomi received a call from the lawyer. His voice was urgent. "Miss Carter, there's been a development. You need to come to the office immediately. It's about the will, and your safety." Her hands trembled as she grabbed her coat. Outside, Theo appeared again, waiting by the door, like a silent guardian. Naomi took a deep breath and stepped into the unknown, the shadows of Everett Langston's final kindness test closing in around her. The moment to face what awaited had come. Naomi's footsteps echoed in the quiet hallway of the lawyer's office, each step heavier than the last. The moment she entered, the man behind the desk looked up, his usual calm replaced by something more urgent, almost fearful. "Miss Carter, please sit," he said, motioning toward a chair, but Naomi barely noticed. Her mind raced with questions, and her eyes searched the room for answers she wasn't sure she wanted. Then, he reached into a drawer and pulled out a thick envelope, worn and creased, sealed with an old-fashioned wax stamp. "This was just found in Mr. Langston's private safe," the lawyer said, placing it carefully in front of her. "It's a letter, addressed to you." Naomi's heart pounded. She broke the seal and unfolded the delicate paper inside. The handwriting was unmistakable, Everett's, elegant but shaky. She read aloud the opening lines, "To the one who showed kindness when no one else did. Your actions stirred hope in a world often blind to it. But there is more than meets the eye." Her fingers trembled. Then the letter took a darker turn. Everett warned her that some people would go to great lengths to keep his fortune out of the hands of those who deserved it. He hinted at secrets tied to the cat, secrets that could change everything Naomi thought she knew about her life, and about Theo. Before she could ask more, the lawyer's phone rang sharply. He glanced at the caller ID and paled. "It's from the police," he said quietly. "There's been a break-in at Mr. Langston's estate." Naomi's breath caught. "What? But the house is empty. He's gone." "Exactly. Someone was after documents, something important related to the will and the estate. The police think it's connected to you." A cold wave washed over her. The money, the cat, the mysterious watchers, it was no longer just about a simple act of kindness. It was about survival. Suddenly, the door to the office creaked open. The man in the brown hat stepped inside, removing his coat and hat with a deliberate calm. "We don't have much time," he said, eyes sharp. "There are people who've been tracking Theo and you. They want to stop Everett's final plan. And they're closer than you think." Naomi's mind reeled. Was the man a friend, or something else? She wanted to trust him, but the feeling of being hunted made every word suspect. Then, the phone rang again, this time on the lawyer's desk. He answered quickly and exchanged a few tense words. "Miss Carter, the police found this in the back of the estate," he said, holding up a small leather-bound book. "It's a journal. And it contains details about Everett's past, and a hidden truth about Theo." Naomi's eyes widened. "Theo isn't just a cat?" The lawyer nodded gravely. "No. He was more than a pet. He was a guardian of a secret that could change everything. And now, you're tangled in it." The room seemed to close in on Naomi. The stakes were higher than ever. What had started as a simple act of compassion, the gift of a sandwich to a starving cat, had unlocked a door to a dangerous world filled with hidden enemies, mysterious guardians, and a fortune that could either save her or destroy everything. Outside, the city carried on, unaware. But Naomi knew that soon, everything would come crashing down. And in the shadows, Theo watched, waiting for the next move. Naomi's hands shook as she flipped through the worn pages of the leather-bound journal. Each entry was a piece of Everett Langston's hidden world, tales of betrayal, lost fortunes, and a secret society dedicated to protecting kindness in the shadows. But one passage stood out, written in hurried, desperate script: "If the wool falls into the wrong hands, everything I built will be destroyed. Theo carries the key, but only the truly kind will unlock it." Her heart raced. The cat wasn't just a test, Theo was the keeper of something valuable, a secret that could change lives. But what? And how? Suddenly, the door burst open. The man in the brown hat moved quickly, ushering Naomi behind a large desk just as footsteps pounded the hallway. Two men stepped in, faces cold and hard, Everett's former business partners, the ones who wanted to stop the final kindness test and claim the fortune for themselves. "Hand over the journal," one growled. "You don't know what you're dealing with." Naomi's breath caught, but before she could react, Theo leapt onto the desk with surprising agility, his fur bristling. The cat's eyes glowed, almost as if alive with some power beyond the ordinary. The men froze, taken aback by the small creature's fierce stance. The man in the brown hat pulled out his phone. "I've already called the police. They're on their way." The tension cracked like lightning. The intruders hesitated, then fled, their threats lingering in the cold air. Minutes later, sirens wailed, and officers swarmed the building. Naomi watched as the police secured the area, her mind spinning with relief and disbelief. That night, safe in her apartment, Naomi stared at the check from Everett Langston, the journal, and the small cat curled beside her. She had passed the test, uncovered secrets, and survived the threats. The fortune was hers, but more than that, she'd been part of something bigger, a legacy of kindness tested in a harsh world. Just as she settled down to sleep, a soft sound came from her phone, a message from an unknown number. She opened it to find a simple photo, a younger Everett Langston, smiling warmly beside a woman who looked just like the nurse. And beneath it, a single line of text: "The test isn't over." Not yet. Naomi's breath hitched. The final kindness wasn't just about money, or even Theo. It was about something deeper, still waiting to be discovered. Outside, Theo stretched, his eyes reflecting the city lights. The story wasn't finished. It was only just beginning. Naomi stared at the message long after the screen had gone dark. The photo of Everett Langston with the nurse, the woman who had warned her, who had known so much, added a new layer to everything she thought she understood. It seemed Everett's final act of kindness wasn't just about testing strangers or leaving money to those who showed compassion. It was about creating a chain of trust and care that stretched deeper than she had ever imagined. In the days that followed, Naomi reached out to the nurse. Their conversations revealed a history of friendship and shared secrets between the two. Everett had trusted the nurse not only to care for him in his final days but also to help guide Naomi through the responsibilities that came with the inheritance. It was a legacy built on kindness, resilience, and the belief that even in a world full of challenges, good would always find a way. The cat, Theo, remained by Naomi's side, no longer just a mysterious stray but a constant reminder of the kindness that started it all. Every time she looked at him, she remembered that simple morning when she gave her last sandwich away, unaware it would change her life forever. Naomi used the inheritance carefully. She set up a foundation to help struggling families and animals, those who, like her and Theo, had once been overlooked or forgotten. She made sure Everett's fortune became a force for good, touching lives in ways that went far beyond money. The threats from Everett's former partners faded as law enforcement acted on the evidence. With the police's help and the support of the community, justice was served. Naomi realized that kindness sometimes required courage, but it could also inspire strength in the face of fear. Through it all, Naomi's life transformed. She found a new purpose and a deeper understanding of what it truly means to give without expecting anything in return. The test had shown her not just her own heart but the hearts of others around her. It revealed that every small act of kindness matters, creating ripples that can reach far beyond what we see. And as for Everett Langston, his final kindness lived on, not just in the fortune he left behind but in the hope he inspired. Through Naomi, the quiet waitress who gave her last sandwich, and through Theo, the cat who carried a secret, his legacy became a story of unexpected generosity and human connection. One quiet evening, as Naomi sat on her porch watching the sunset, Theo curled up in her lap, purring softly. She thought about the journey, the fear, the mystery, the kindness tested and proven. She smiled, knowing that sometimes the smallest actions could open the door to the greatest changes. The story of a starving cat, a dying man, and a simple act of kindness had grown into something far bigger than any of them could have imagined. And in the end, it was a reminder for all of us: compassion matters. It changes lives. It builds bridges where walls once stood. Naomi looked down at Theo and whispered, "Thank you, little friend." The cat blinked up at her, calm and steady, like he understood. And together, they stepped into a future shaped by kindness, one that would keep growing, one act at a time.